Today, we are talking about moving on up the career ladder, and we have brought back. We've got three fantastic minds, senior leaders in their organizations that have navigated this career ladder on their own, and we're going to let them share some of the lessons they've learned along the way. I'm going to introduce. We got Kelly Jones, who is Vice President of Product Management at Paycor, Steve Mello, who is VP of Product and Strategy at Sprout Loud, who's been a business partner of mine in the past as well, and Yasmin Wickham, who is VP of Senior Director of Product at Scripps Networks. So I want to welcome all three of our panelists and just kind of start with a quick introduction, and let's go over here to Kelly and ask Kelly, would you tell everybody who you are, a little bit about yourself, and how you personally kind of found your way into product management.
Sounds good. Thanks, Jason. My name is Kelly Jones, VP of Product Management at Paycor. I am out of Atlanta, Georgia, and like most of us, took an interesting route to product management. I have an accounting degree. I really thought I was going to be an accountant. I'm not really sure what 20-year-old Kelly was thinking about, but that was my plan. I moved down to Atlanta from New York many, many years ago, and I did it without a job. And I applied to a temp job that was in customer service of a tech company called Peachtree Software. And they sold accounting software. And I fully intended to just, get back into product or get back into accounting. I can't even say accounting anymore. But I really found my home in the tech industry and a tech company, right? The vibe was really fantastic. It was a startup before there were startups, right? I could go to my work wearing jeans and a t-shirt. I'm like, what is this you call tech? And I was there 11 years or 12 years. And I grew up inside that organization. I went from a temp and tech support, eventually to QA, and then into product management. The way I got there, like many of us for the first time, was through domain expertise, right? I had accounting background. We were selling accounting software. I was supporting accounting software. Mm-hmm. And with my knowledge, I was sharing that internally with my peers in support who knew a lot about computers, but nothing about accounting, and then shared it with the product and engineering organization, which is how I got recruited into QA when I didn't even know what QA was. And then they hired a product manager from Cork, which was graphic design software, who knew nothing about it. And she used to rely on me with my accounting expertise to help her make some of the decisions. And when she got promoted up to director, she met me for lunch and said, "Do you want to be a product manager?" I was like, I don't really know what it is, but sure. So it was my expertise that got me there, and I fell in love with tech, and I fell in love with product management at Peachtree Software, which eventually became Sage Software. So yep. A ton of fun.
Very cool. Thank you, Kelly, and welcome. And let's swing over here to Mr. Mello, Steve Mello. Welcome. Hey. Thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. My story is a little bit interesting, kind of like Kelly's. I came up through marketing. I was a marketer, and when I was at IBM, there was a decision that we wanted to expand our portfolio, which was largely middleware. We had one odd piece of software, odd in the sense it didn't fit in with everything else in the portfolio, which was a market-leading e-commerce application. And the decision was to either, push that out of the company or build around it. And fortunately, the decision was to build around it. And it was at a time when marketers were starting to blend the art approach that they used in marketing with a more scientific approach, and you started seeing the MarTech industry really grow up. So a new division was started at IBM, and we went out and we did several acquisitions, including Silverpop there in the Atlanta area, which obviously Jason knows quite well. Mm-hmm. And eventually, I was in marketing, as I said. I was then, when I moved into that new division, in M&A, which was an interesting jump in and of itself. But then I went into product management. And for me, I really wanted to be in product management because it gave me an opportunity to look at a market and find a way to satisfy a set of customers' needs, and to do so better than anybody else. So a little bit it was about the solution, but a lot of it was also about the competitiveness, and being able to try to win and put myself in a position where I could help the company that I was in really achieve their goals and to win. I thought there was no better way to do that than actually be there at the forefront on the product, which is what we were actually marketing and selling. And it also gave me an opportunity to really get into some other things that I like. Again, I came out of marketing, so understanding users, understanding markets, understanding the competition are all still really important hallmarks of what make a great product management person. So it allowed me to still transfer a lot of those skills and interest areas into an area, like I said, that was really at the forefront of what the company was doing.
That's great. Thanks, Steve. And for our third panelist, welcome to Yasmin Wickham. Yasmin, thanks for being here. And tell us a little bit about kind of how you found your way into product management. You also had an interesting path there as well.
Yeah, thanks for having me. So I lead product at Scripps Networks. It's a TV company that owns 13 national TV stations or national TV brands and among the stations as well. So if you've ever watched Ion, Core TV, or Scripps News, that's our product. So I drive the strategy for 40 plus web, mobile, and connected TV products, and I am pulling my hair out. So, you know, I did not land here with intention. This is what Jason's talking about. So I actually ended up coming into product from development, and it was kind of really strange. I had done a pivot. I had been doing, unbeknownst to me, I had been doing product work for 20 years, running my own business, like a consultancy, helping companies go from zero internet presence to ending up with a website, an e-commerce strategy, SEO, marketing funnels, all that stuff. So I decided to pivot into the corporate world, doing what I felt comfortable with, which was PHP development. And I quickly had somebody in a higher level recognize my value, which was phenomenal, and kind of drag me along as their sponsor. So I was given opportunities to do product work in a company that didn't know what product was. So I am one of those people who has had multiple positions that are product positions, but are not named as such. So eventually, after some acquisitions, 2 or 3 reorgs, still with the same team from the original company, but in a new company, I ran into a manager who was like, "Hey, you're doing product work." And I'm like, "I am. Thank you for telling me what I've been doing all this time, because I had no idea." So, so it's been really interesting because I have enjoyed everything that I do. The challenge that I enjoyed from running my own business still exists with the multiple brands and the multiple products. It's just more focused towards a centralized goal now for me. But that is actually how I ended up in product.
Excellent. Thank you. And yeah, you're right. It is it's a very different path, and there are so many product roles out there that don't have that in the title. And I've talked, and we've got quite a few people. I think there's a few people on the call here today that we've talked recently about, hey, I really think I'm doing product management work, even though that's not what my job description says. How can I make this more clear? And I think we're going to talk a little bit more about that as well in a few minutes. So, but why don't we, while we're doing that, you know, as you've kind of navigated your career, Yasmin, and thought about your responsibilities on a day-to-day basis and some of the key choices that led you there, how have your responsibilities changed along the way to you know, as you move from development, as you move from that entrepreneurial perspective, and you had some of those commonalities with product management, but now in your current role, how is that different? Talk about a little bit about some of the things you have to do now that you didn't have to do in the past.
Yeah, goodness, it is definitely a big change, right? Once you start stepping into those leadership roles, those things that you used to do and you used to do so well and comfortably are no longer the things that you're being asked to do at the next level. So a lot of times it's been an intentional 180, you know, learning to let go of those things that you love to do. Like one of my biggest hangups, probably in my first transition, was I want to do development work. It makes me happy. Let me, let me in there. Let me code. I want to code. I can do this. Why am I telling somebody else? Or like, why am I talking to a dev about this? Let me do this. So it took a minute, but once I started reframing, okay, what does product look like at, in this new role or at this next level? You'll start easily seeing those things that you need to let go of. Obviously for me personally, one of those steps was letting go of the coding and allowing the engineering teams to do what they do best, while I start leaning into those things that I do best, which is, like Stephen mentioned, understanding the customer, knowing where the business opportunities are, figuring out how to increase the revenue, listening to the voice of the consumer, just digging into your customer support systems and whatnot. Those things are things that I didn't do as a developer. Obviously, I was not in the middle of what tech support was doing. Like, I was solving the problem for the support team, not necessarily thinking about, well, we've had 5 customers in the last week have the same problem. Is there something larger going on? Let me step back and take a look at the bigger picture and see if maybe there's a different solution for this. So it feels a little bit like the further up you go, you are slightly a little less hands-on and fully in the mix, because you really have to start thinking about the operations and strategy pieces, and not necessarily how do I work with, my product team to move things from point A to point B.
That's very helpful. So, and then just coming back over here to Steve as well, you talked a little bit about what led you into that leadership role in product management, and kind of some of the choices you made along the way. But as you think about how your role has evolved, and even in your last couple of roles as well, compared to other product people, some of the more junior folks on your team, whether it just be, at the next level down at that kind of director level versus the individual contributor level, as a leader in product and strategy, what are the things that you're focused on that your directors and your individual contributors aren't necessarily focused on?
Yeah, I think as you progress upward in your career, the roles do change a little bit, or the focus changes, right? So for me, 2 of the biggest things that really became increasingly important as I moved up were, one, being a driver of what the strategy and the vision was going to be for the product area, and which in turn really drives the strategy and the vision for the company. And when you're a little bit lower level, you're more into the execution. You're not so much thinking about that, but to have that anchor that everybody's looking towards, or that North Star is probably better visual, that everybody's looking towards, is really important. And you find, like, even when I came into the first company I went to after IBM, there just wasn't that. And that was a big reason why they brought me in. And it was amazing how, when I went around and had introductory conversations, how it came up with literally every single person that they were lacking that, and how it made their job harder. So one of my first things to do was really think about that. It takes a little bit of time, because you have to get to know the company, you have to get to know the space, but then you wanted to get something down that people could use that North Star. And then the second piece that I think becomes really important as you start to move up, that's directly tied to that, is you have that strategy, but I've seen in the past where, especially when I was at a bigger place, where that strategy doesn't get connected to the day-to-day. And once you've established that North Star strategy, which is really important, it's equally as important to make sure that then finds its way into the day-to-day. How do you take that big vision and break it into smaller pieces? How do you break it into projects? How do you actually get everybody rallied behind it? I think if you don't do that, it winds up being a pretty looking deck that sounds really good and maybe attracts some attention while you're in the meeting, but then people go back to what they're doing in that day or the next week, and it's kind of forgotten about. And that's a shame, because if you really put your thought into that document and everybody rallies behind it, you want to see it come to life. And the only way to make it come to life is really connected into the day-to-day. So I think those are 2 of the biggest things that I really saw being different as you move up. along with just people management, right? You have to start managing
Sure.
people also, and that's a big consideration. But from the day-to-day job point, it's the two things I really mentioned.
Yeah. Do you find that the people management part of the job takes away from your ability to do the product part of the job, or is it just a functional, fundamental part of it?
Yeah, it definitely takes time. So as people were saying before, as they move up, there's other things they've got to do. Jasmine was saying she couldn't do things she was doing in the past. But it's an important part of what you do. I've had lots of people as they move up say, I want to be a manager. I want to be a manager. It's like, all right, careful what you ask for, because do you really realize everything that comes with it? You do have to let go of some of the things you've done in the past that maybe you really liked a lot. And you do have to do other things, including people management. And people management can be wonderful and can be really rewarding, but there's times where it's just really tough.
Yeah.
People have issues, and there's things you've got to help them work through. Challenges just in their own role, challenges with other people. So it does take time. It takes a meaningful commitment, and you've got to, time is finite. So you have to find the time and carve it out and put something else to the side to allow yourself to do that really well.
Yep. Thank you. So, and so let's swing over to Kelly. And Kelly, your experience is a little bit different, because while you did start out and got into product through your subject matter expertise, you started out as an individual contributor in product management and have grown your career through several different levels and a couple of different companies into the place you are now. So it'd be really interesting to hear from your perspective how that job and how those priorities and responsibilities and areas of focus have changed for you over the years.
And just, it wasn't a complete linear, right? So I went up and grew within the organization at Peachtree, made it to director, took a step back in a couple of organizations, started over, so to speak, and then eventually continued up and ramped up throughout my career. Is from a people leadership perspective, I actually don't enjoy doing the strategy, funny enough, but enjoy, I've been lucky in a couple of organizations where we have a very pointed product strategy, and I was able to walk into that. And my responsibility is, how do I elevate the product management organization to better bring new opportunities to the organization and better support the product strategy and the corporate strategy overall. And I've learned that is my sweet spot, and allowing myself to put myself into organizations that I'm set up to be successful has been really important throughout my career. It hasn't been as hard as you would have thought for me to let go, because what my passion is actually not solving the problems. My passion is, how do I identify the opportunities? How do I identify those opportunities crisply so folks can solve it? And what's changed is the altitude at which opportunities I'm trying to identify and solve. I almost look at people leadership as a product management challenge. Right. Right. I go in and understand from my senior leaders, what are those opportunities they see, but also work with my team underneath me to understand what, their challenges and opportunities are, and how do I develop a roadmap, so to speak, and elevate the team and solve some of those challenges at the highest level, as well as with my team members as well. So letting go wasn't as hard as you would have thought for me, because I was never really passionate about the doing, right? Writing user stories, not really passionate for me, but identifying those big problems and helping people solve them or letting people solve them is really, truly what I'm passionate about. I don't know if that answers your question.
It really does. But I want to take that as a jumping off point into kind of another line of discussion and talk about, as you've made this career journey, you have to have faced some challenges along the way, and you kind of touched on a couple of areas there, but I'd really like to dig in a little bit on as you think about your progression to more senior roles. What would you say is the most significant challenge you've faced along the way, and what would you say you learned from it?
So I'll go back to the Peachtree experience. I was there 12 years, and I grew up there, right? I was 22 years old when I started. I was in my early 30s when I left. And I was laid off, which was hard, which I suspect some of the people on the call are dealing with right now. And a couple of things I learned from that experience, right? First, it takes a hit on your confidence level and realizing it's not necessarily about you, but I also took a time to reflect and figure out how to improve. And what I didn't do that I should have done earlier in my career was invest in myself, right? When I was at Peachtree, I was always learning from the people inside the organization and wasn't learning from people outside the organization. So I learned to invest in myself by getting involved, as you know, in product camp after that initial layoff, which is kind of the beginning of that investment for me, which is product camp, books, podcasts, things of that nature. And also invested and leaned in. I'm an introvert and not just a little bit of an introvert, a lot of it of an introvert. I leaned into investing in my presentation skills, which are not really showcased right now. But I leaned into presentation. I leaned into speaking opportunities to continue to grow that as a skill set because it's needed in a variety of ways. The more traditional presentations, but also leading a team and speaking in front of a team and being able to connect and inspire and bring folks along was something I invested in. So my challenge was getting laid off. What I learned is that I was probably too insular as a product person, and that is something I've actually done a lot of over the past 15 plus years, is invested in myself.
That's great. And as Allison said, solid gold advice. Investing in yourself and seeking community is helpful. See, the I want to jump over here to Yasmin next, and I kind of ask you the same question as you look back over that progression. What would you say, one of the most significant challenges you've faced is, and what did you learn from that?
All right. So for me, I feel like alignment is everything. The closer I was to the spectrum of being a developer and working with my one or two or four individual products, I really didn't need much alignment. We were allowed to run like a startup within a larger company, and the only alignment I really needed to have was my boss. Once we got acquired and the more the group grew, the alignment piece was just so key, because I couldn't necessarily run with the things that I wanted to do for the products. I needed to make sure it was okay with stakeholders, that it fit into the strategy that was being set by the company. And even now, like at this level, so Stephen talked about it before, company sets mission, vision, and strategy, and you need to make sure that all the functional teams and all the the cross-functional teams are actually on board, with what we're doing, so that we're all rowing in the same direction. Sometimes there's disconnects in communication. Sometimes even with solid communication, there's disconnects in the way that the message is delivered or how the message is received. So putting in, frameworks or meetings where you just touch base with people, it's really, really important. Anything to foster, to encourage, to make sure that alignment, that everybody knows how we're going to move forward, is just so important. And it's always been a challenge, particularly in this space, because even though, like you guys heard my story about being in product roles that weren't labeled product roles, I'm in a product role now, but it's just our immediate team that understands what it means to function like product. We're still doing education up to make sure that the larger company and our business teams understand this is how we can come along and help you. So just that continued communication and alignment has always been a challenge, that you absolutely need to get right in order for you to be able to do what you want to do.
I hear that so often from people who are often taking on that first product management role in the company, and just helping people understand what it is, what value you're intended to contribute, why you're here, and why it's important in enabling their success, and how to leverage those conversations in the right way. So that is a huge challenge and key challenge to solve for. So absolutely can relate. How about you, Steve? How about some of the challenges, or one of the big challenges you faced along your way, and what you've learned from it?
Yeah, I think for me, I get very emotionally invested in the projects I'm working on, right? They all become my babies. They're all my children. And I think it's really critical to learn that things aren't going to stay the same. Priorities change, right? Corporate priorities change, budgets change. You know, people have talked here about having funding and then losing funding, or losing a job because of layoffs, and that all ties to budgets change. And when those things happen, oftentimes the projects you're working on can be affected. They could be streamlined, they could be completely eliminated, they could be temporarily shelved. And I think it's, you know, for me early on, it was very easy to get in the doldrums because of that. You know, like, oh, this was my baby, and now look, it's different than what I expected, or it's gone. And what you really need to do, and what I needed to do, I think, was to learn adaptability. I mean, that's business, right? Like they say, it's business. It's not personal. It isn't your baby. It's a project. And you know, how do you kind of dust yourself off and say, okay, well, how can I reshape this project to fit within the new priority, or to fit within the new budget, or how can I now work on something different that better aligns to the new priority? So that adaptability, and stripping away the emotion of it, was something I think that was really important, especially I think when you're younger, more junior, and you're doing some things for the first time that really are important to you. You're really proud of them. And when they go away, it just, and all of a sudden it's like, nope, we're not doing that anymore. And you come in on Monday and it's gone. It's like, wow, that was so abrupt. But it happens. So to learn that adaptability, and like I said, if you have to reshape a project, or if you have to just move on to the next project and figure out how it better fits with the revised priorities or revised budgets, that adaptability and being comfortable with adaptability is something I think is really important for me.
Yeah, and one of the things that was kind of inherent in that thread is it's not personal. It is, and that's why that adaptability is. You have to be clinical about it, right? You have to be pretty antiseptic about it.
Yeah, and it's hard. It's really hard because you do put a lot of time and effort into the projects you're working on. You put a lot of intellectual currency into it, and then when it just goes away, it seems so, you know, just kind of arbitrary. But it's not, and it's just part of business.
Yeah,
And,
absolutely.
I'd like to speak into that too, because so Stephen is talking about it at a personal level. If you add the people management piece to it, you also have to think about, you know, how do you communicate that change in direction to your team? The fact that they have burned 4 months, a whole quarter, you know, of their life working on a product that they were getting ready to see out in the market, but leadership has come in and said, hey, we have to pivot because of A, B, and C. Like, you also have to think about, you know, how do you make that time burned meaningful for your team as well, so that they're not losing, feeling miserable. you know.
That's a really good point. Yeah, that is very important. You have to then, as you move up, extend down that learning that information, make all of them feel good about it, right? So yeah, that's a great point.
So I'm going to put this out to the panel. I'll let anybody kind of jump in first that wants to, and let you walk all over each other. It'll be fun to watch the duke it out. But Allison asked a question in the chat about what advice you'd give to mid-level career product managers who like people management. How do you lean in and increase your value from that perspective so that you can take on more of that role when you're in an individual contributor role right now?
Well, I answered it a little bit for her.
Yeah, you did. You did. For the purpose of the folks who aren't there on chat, would you mind speaking to that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So real quick, there were 3 things that I immediately thought of that you could do. You know, one was you need to speak up and let your boss know, right? You know, we're not mind readers. I don't think anybody is. So, you know, if you don't tell me what your career goals are, I don't know. So if that's something that, if you find that you're doing stakeholder management and you are knocking it out of the park and you'd like to move into people management, let me know. there may be something coming down the pipeline that I wasn't aware, or that you're not aware of, but that I am, that I can start steering you towards. The second thing is, my company, and I'm sure a lot of companies do as well, look for internal ways to improve and build our internal candidate pool. So some of the things, like one of the things that we have is a managerial training track. So anybody who is potentially interested in people management or has just been promoted into the first people management role, they go through this internal course. So that's where you learn lots of different things, that different ways to talk to people, and what you might want to do in certain scenarios, what it looks like to build a dreaded PIP and all that kind of stuff. So and then the third piece is, most companies tied to your annual increases will ask you to do goals. You have to do the hard work too and figure out, okay, let me do a self-evaluation and see where I think my gaps may be with my skill set for managers of what I know. And obviously you're going to be doing, you guys are all product managers, you're going to be doing the research, your Uncle Google's your friend. There's plenty of things that you can learn about, being managers. But I would take the opportunity and reframe your value to the team by creating your career goals for your salary increases related around your career goals for becoming a people manager. The more that you surface that out, the more that your immediate boss sees that you're really intent on this, the more that they will start thinking of you in that light. And that may also open up additional opportunities for you to be the individual contributor for a specific initiative that goes across multiple brands or multiple products and stuff like that, giving you more exposure to running those cross-functional teams that you're going to need, because you need the people skills and being able to learn how to read people and know when to say what and read rooms and all that kind of stuff.
Very good. Thank you so much. Steve, Kelly, anything to add?
Kelly, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I can start. So I'll definitely echo making your intentions, to your immediate leader that you want to be a people leader. That's how I got back into people leadership. Somebody got promoted and I went to my leader and I was like, I'm interested. What do I need to do differently? Because that job wasn't even posted. And she's like, I didn't even know. So definitely be intentional. The second is people management is a job, it's a title, but leadership is something you do. And you need to, as an individual contributor, think about how can you be a leader inside your organization and exhibit those skills, right? Sharing your knowledge, helping other, looking for opportunities to be better as an individual, but as a group, and partnering with your team and your people leader to make sure you're on that path to showcase your leadership skills. But think about how that shows up inside your organization.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Go ahead. No, I was going to just say, I love that quote, and somebody's already kind of captured it and dropped it there in the chat there. It's people management is a job, leadership is something you do. That's fantastic. Steve, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm gonna echo what Yasmin Kelly said about be intentional, vocalize that you want to do it, because people aren't mind readers, like Yasmin said. But then also building on what Kelly said, even if you're not a people manager at the current time, but you want to do that, you can start to lead by example. Even as an individual contributor, be an informal mentor. How do you carry yourself in meetings? How do you coach people when they're expressing in a meeting, let's say if they're struggling with something? It doesn't just have to be the senior person who chimes in with solutions. It could be somebody more junior. Get that reputation where people are walking around saying, hey, Steve was really helpful to me on this thing, or Steve really jumped in and came to me and went and had lunch with me and talked to me about this thing I was struggling with. And that way you're starting to exhibit those leadership qualities, even though you may not have that managerial or people managing type of role yet, but you're getting the reputation for showing the type of qualities or leadership type of qualities that Kelly was mentioning that would make you a great people manager in the future.
Fantastic, thank you. And yeah, we have captured that quote for all time. So um, so I want to remind everybody, if you're in the Zoom or if you're out on YouTube, drop your questions in the chat or just raise your hand if you'd like to ask a question for the panel. We're about to start wrapping up here in the next few minutes, and I want to take that opportunity. Unless I see a hand up go up in the next 5 seconds or so, I want to start, and you can still do that. But I do want to kind of start getting down to some of the landing the plane on today's conversation. And we've circled around this a few times, but I want to really kind of hone in on kind of the one or two big things that you hope that people in the audience today will take away and do as a result of the conversation today. What would those things be? And let me start with you, Steve, since you're still on my screen.
Yeah, what would be some of the advice I'd leave people with?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it plays a little bit to what I said before. Projects are going to come and go. Hopefully, more times than not, it's going to be because they come to a successful end, and you've launched a product or you've improved a product. Sometimes it'll be because priorities or budgets change. So I think that the most important thing for people to focus on is, what skills are you accumulating? Think about it as a skills toolkit. Skills are transferable, skills endure. So, for me, or even going back to Jason, what you were saying earlier, when we're talking about people looking for a job and the boards on Indeed and things like that, you look at what the requirements are for a job. Those are really a set of skills that some future employer is looking for. So I think, as you move around and you work on different projects, you work in different companies, think about how you can be constantly building out that skill set, and not necessarily just always doing the same things, but expanding that skill set. So as you move up, and when you move up, you're asked to do a broader set of things and have responsibility for a broader set of things. You've built out a nice, rich skill set that is, like I said, transferable and can never be taken away from you.
Great advice, absolutely. And so, and it's not just about the role that you have, the role that you move into, and taking those skills away from the role that you move into. But as you mentioned, like when we were talking with Elliot earlier, when you're looking for your next role, being very intentional about what you want to learn, not just what can I do, but what do I want to learn in my next role.
Yeah, because you're going to look at roles, and hopefully you're going to have 80-85% of what they want, but there's always going to be 10 or 15% that is a growth opportunity for you. So I think that's a great opportunity to say, yeah, I can come in and help you a lot on most of this, but there's also an opportunity for me to expand my skill set, for me to grow as well.
Yep. Thank you. Yasmin, let's pivot over to you.
Yeah. So I have two. One is, if you're not internally networking in your company, you need to do it. So there are so many teams. Our team is small, so there's we don't have a lot of other product people, but we do have two other product org teams that it's really interesting, the way that they do product, or how they're leveraged, in their divisions. So somebody just introduced this concept to me the other day of like creating a product council inside of your company, where all of the product managers come in and just have a conversation regardless of the divisions in the company. So something like that is really important, just that internal networking with your product managers, and then a level or two up, just get curious as to what people are doing. You'll start to see connections that you never really saw before, or opportunities, or just potential. You'll start to understand the potential blockers that aren't fully explained to you, simply because maybe they can't be explained, or somebody's not trickling down that information. So the second one is, again, I'm going to say it again, it's just my last role that has the word product in it. So I would encourage you, if you're looking at a role and it doesn't have the words product manager in it, it doesn't necessarily mean that is not a role for you. If you look at the description and you see that it really is product, and you come out of it with achievements that you've been able to frame as outcomes where you're showing the value that you brought to the role, I would certainly step into it. Almost anything can be a stepping stone into a correctly named product role, because again, there's so many companies who don't understand product, don't know what to call it. Doesn't mean that that's not for you. So, and just to be clear, there are also plenty of hiring managers like me. I'm not hiring right now. I'm sorry. I just filled a role. So, there's plenty of hiring managers like me who've had this experience and understand that just because nowhere on your resume does it say product manager, it does not mean that you're not capable of doing the job. I can see that you are outcomes focused based on the things that you're showing me on your resume. I'm going to have that additional conversation with you to verify what I believe to be true.
That was a great piece of advice. Also, Yasmin, thanks. Making sure that you're demonstrating that outcome focus, and that you can do those things even if you haven't had that specific skill in your resume. Being able to demonstrate that outcome focus is really powerful. And let's see here. And Kelly, how about you?
So in prepping for this morning, I did think about my career journey, over the past 30-ish years. And I realized, right, I didn't go up. I went from individual contributor to director, back down to individual contributor, then flatlined, and then found my home, and then continued to go up again. But to build on what Steve said, every one of those jobs that I had, I continued to build my skill set. Every job led to another. I picked up a skill and learned something new that I was able to take and apply at the next position. And it helped me get that next job. Even when I didn't see it as it was happening, reflecting, I can see how it all connected together. And also, I'm actually going to steal from a friend of mine who posted on LinkedIn this morning, and it was really timely because her post said, follow your passion is something she wants to retire as a phrase. And what she wants to say is be passionate, right? Be passionate about learning, about teaching, honing your craft, being a servant to others, and then opening the door behind you. And if you do all those things, the job itself matters a little less. And she said it really eloquently, so I'm stealing from her this morning. Because I can see how each of those things actually led me to where I am. And the last thing I did at my prior organization is I actually did open the door behind me for somebody else to walk through, which was really rewarding. And watching that person excel at the position I left has been really great.
Yep. That's great. And I see Matt has been dropping some advice in there as well. And so I'd like to invite Matt to kind of come repeat up here for the group, kind of some of your perspective. So for those who met Matt at the beginning of the call, Matt's been a member of our Product Coffee Premium community for a while. He's director of product at Civics, and he's kind of made some of these evolutions himself. So what advice do you have for everybody, Matt, in terms of managing their career forward?
Yeah, find opportunities and take advantage of them, and find ways that you can create opportunities for yourself. I guess I feel fortunate that those couple of opportunities early on presented themselves to me because someone saw potential in me, but I still had to do the work and figure things out and whatnot. I mean, I used to get to work at like 5 a.m. in the morning, and sometimes a little bit earlier, and I would just start thinking through the product that I was working on and how we were going to do things and the problems that the customers have and the questions and who am I going to interview this week, and just starting to do those things that a PM would do. But at the time I was in more of a business analyst role, so I wasn't a product manager, but I was tasked with doing product management essentially. So you're going to find, I think, for some of the junior and mid-career folks that you're not officially in the role yet. As Yasmin had mentioned, there are ways that you can represent your experience on your resume to show that you're doing the work. And I think in the actual day-to-day of the workplace, you should keep an ear out. You should definitely talk to your colleagues and network internally, as you mentioned, because that's what's going to help you discover those opportunities. And then find ways to plug yourself into that work. Make clear your intentions to your colleagues too. Say, I'd like to get engaged with that. How can I help you? Or just identify ways that you can help them and offer that up, to the table and do something and show it to them and say, hey, what do you think? See how receptive they are at some a little too far here. Do I need to adjust how I'm doing this? There's just sort of that back and forth that you do. But yeah, I think just a matter of being proactive as much as you can to identify and seize those opportunities and act on them is really important when you're trying to move up. And the gist of what I said in the chat was basically find ways that you can engage your colleagues to help you with your workload. Maybe there's stuff that you can do to get them involved to help grow their skills. That's how you should look at it. Don't necessarily look at it as advancing yourself. Look at it as empowering others and helping them to move along. And other people will see that as a good thing. And all in all, the world goes round when we help each other. So.
That's also always great advice from you, Matt. Thanks for jumping that in. I want to drop one. I see we got a couple of folks here on the call. I see Jay Henderson is lurking there in the background as well. And, Jay and Steven and I worked together, some more directly than others, at IBM for a few years. And guys, one of the things that I loved most about my experience at IBM and the structure that they had, and I've applied as a template in how I advise people going in other companies as well. And it gets back to what Yasmin was saying about outcome focus. If you can create business value in a significant way with your product and think about how do I grow this product beyond just being a product to a full business, that can also create opportunities for you to move forward. And that was one of the great experiences I had at IBM, is being assigned a strategic product to do some product management work on, but then doing the work with the team to develop that beyond just a set of features that met some customers' needs and met some requests, but building a business around it. And that was one of the things that helped me rise up in my organization to a more senior level by creating the need, by creating value for more people to get the work done and creating a product management organization under that initial, one person product. So another way that I would advise people to look at your path forward in your current company is say, how can I create so much value with this product that we need more people to manage it, that I can continue to bring people into an organization and help them grow as well. Anybody else have anything they'd like to contribute in the next 60 seconds before we land this plane? All right. Well, I want to thank everybody for being here today, everybody for showing up. This has been a great conversation. Steve, Yasmin, Kelly, your insights were every bit as valuable as I knew they would be. And I really want to thank everybody for taking the time to be here and share your perspective with us today. And it's been a great session. I'm looking forward to seeing you all back here next week for our next session on finding mentors and advocates within your organization and within our career path, and using those relationships to learn more and accelerate your own career. And look forward to seeing many of you here on Friday of next week, on the 12th as well, for our workshop on your roadmap development process, how you go around building your go about building your roadmap, those types of things you share, and learning about a framework for ensuring that every roadmap you create is delivering the right information to the right audience along the way. Thanks everybody for being here. It's been a great session,